and welcome back to The Workaround. My name is Bob Gilbreth. You are in good company with over 11,000 entrepreneurs and innovators who follow my stories from a career in tech startups and corporate innovation. Sitting here right now to make you think, smile, discover a shortcut to success, and or a trap to avoid. And this is another in my series of interesting conversations with interesting people that I know and love. And today's a real treat. I am this week going to be sharing my conversation with Raman Sehgal. He's a man of many interests. By day, he's the SVP head of marketing for EDO, which is a leading scaling platform that measures predictive behaviors driven by Convergent TV advertising. By night, he's a father of 2 young children, the host of 3 podcasts, and the biggest fanboy of Andor you will ever meet. Raman is an old friend of mine and a dear friend of mine, and I'd like to introduce him here by sharing a couple of stories, the story of how we met, and then how we kind of met again. I first met Raman in 2005, shortly after I left my job at Procter & Gamble, or P&G, to join my friends as a partner at a digital advertising agency where P&G was our biggest client. Raman was a new hire in the digital marketing team at the company. Somehow he found a blog I had been writing on the side called The Challenge Dividend, and he liked the content and knew that we were an agency partner of his, so he reached out to me and said to see if I'd be up for a chat. Of course, I said yes. And then I discovered quickly that Raman, like me, is a true geek in the digital space. We quickly became friends rather than a traditional client-vendor relationship. And over the months from there, we found various ways to both work and hang out together. And then in the years that would come, we would just get together every couple of months and trade insights and perspectives on big career and life topics. And what I really loved about this time together was Raman represented for me kind of the hope of going to the agency side, where I could find passionate clients who shared my desire to crack the code on what's next, along with a wish to find some good friends in the process. Sadly, I did not find too many other client friends like Raman in the many years that I have been running professional service businesses, but that's a topic for another day. Back to Raman, eventually he took an assignment in Singapore. Then he left Procter & Gamble for a role at Dannon in New York City, kind of outside New York City. I, in the same time, left my agency after finishing the sale of the company and began planning the launch of my first startup. Those geographic and career changes kind of prevented us from staying as close as we once were. But then one day, I boarded a plane returning from New York City, and as I settled into my upgraded seat, I saw my old friend Raman a few rows back. He was huddled in a window seat, his hoodie was pulled over his head, and he was frankly looking miserable. But he did perk up a little bit when he recognized me, but still I could tell he was feeling down. So once the wheels were up, I gave up my first class seat and went to go chat with Raman, who had a row to himself. And he shared how he was indeed feeling down due to a frustrating career turn. Then I told him about my new startup that wasn't yet public. I asked him how I could help him, and he replied, "Can you hire me?" Kind of in a half-joking way, but I remember my thought at the time and my answer. It was something like, "Hell yes." My startup had recently secured funding, and I knew Raman would bring both high energy and kind of the jack-of-all-trades skill set that is critical at the early stages. Plus, I loved and trusted Raman, and working with people like him has been a big reason for any success I've had over my career. So when I answered hell yes, he immediately perked up, and we spent the rest of the flight in a flurry of conversation about how we could remake the world of digital marketing together, just like old times. Raman ended up coming aboard and brought everything I hoped for and more to our company. I even went back to my journal as part of preparing here and rediscovered some entries about our times together. One in particular, of many that I pulled out, was from October 2013, when we had just finished pitching a very large beauty brand together. And I wrote in my journal back then, it was fun to work closely with Raman again, training him a bit and having fun with each of us playing our roles very nicely together. It was a business equivalent of two guys jamming on the guitar. However, our instrument was a presentation deck, and our crowd was a room of 10 agency and brand folks. Raman and I would go on to experience many ups and downs together during our struggle to go from 0 to 1 at our startup. Those days strained our friendship, and it sometimes cracked. But through it all, we grew as leaders and humans, and I think the challenges made our friendship stronger and more mature. And I know the universe arranged for us to reconnect on that random flight years ago. Our life journeys are intertwined. Raman is an incredibly thoughtful, creative, quirky, and fun person, so it's no surprise that we did not discuss marketing strategy or startup challenges. Besides, there are plenty of other places you can find that stuff, including your favorite AI tool. Instead, we discussed life and how business has served as a kind of proving ground for our personal development, especially around fatherhood and friendship. So with that, let me turn it over to our conversation, and then I'll be back at the end for a fun content share too. He is the consummate podcast host. So, Raman, you already had some thoughts. I'm going to hand you the keys. Get this conversation going here.
No pressure, man. Long-time listener, first-time caller, Bob. I was talking to another mutual friend of ours, Ryan, who's big time, trade pub editor in chief, and he at his new job he launched a podcast, and it's really good. And I'm Adspeak, go check it out by Adweek. And part of it is I enjoy his take because you mentioned one of my pods, Quarantine Comics, which during the pandemic him and I picked up, and it was we talk about comics, reflect on life. You've been a guest on there a few times, forcing you to read some like really good science fiction comics. But I don't know if I'm biased to guys like you and Ryan and Sharon, because it's just like an extension of the conversations that we always have, but hearing it through someone else. But I am going to say it's really weird hearing you at 1x speed in this conversation. So if I start to speak fast, slow me down.
Okay.
So this is something you and I have agreed. When I was emailing you, I like to think we've agreed to disagree on a lot of stuff, and that's healthy, because I've known you. You quit Proctor the year I was joining. I saw you at a thing, and you were one of the only people not saying like BS on stage at this thing. I was like, I want to seek that guy out, because I'm just kind of, if I see someone saying something, I want to go talk to them. That's what I do at the podcast. Like I read a book, I watch a film, I reach out, I'm like, hey, that was awesome. Can we talk? And that turned into friendship, work relationships as a client, you being my boss. And again, lots of agree to disagree, and good coaching and feedback. The idea to planting the seed to want to leave corporate. I've heard from other people in corporate now, when every once in a while I interview there, they're like, you're ruined on big company. And I'm like, thanks, Bob, because I've seen the
You're
light.
welcome.
And but family's a hard, I feel like family's the other startup, isn't it? Like it's the ultimate startup. It's the ultimate entrepreneurial journey to, you've got a co-founder usually, and that co-founder, and you hopefully have some chemistry and some aligned values, and you make a big decision, life, financial, everything, and you're going to kind of like, honestly, I did with my startup. You put your life on hold for this thing. Fortunately, my partner and I, we did a lot of stuff. We waited longer to have kids. We lived overseas. We traveled overseas. We built careers. I joined a startup with my friend and lived on the road practically for a few years. And I was literally just across the table with breakfast with her this morning. Our 9-year-old is getting ready for camp. Our 4-year-old is being a 4-year-old at breakfast, and he goes to play with his sister, and we just kind of like look at each other, this exasperated look, and we're like, oh, we're in it. Like, we know we're in it, and we've got to, like, the life planning, the time for us, it's harder. But I mean, a little bit of table setting. So like, I started my family on the tail end of my first startup job with you, right? And lots to unpack there. Um, and I'm now in my mid 40s, 9-year-old, 4-year-old, live just outside of New York City. Uh, got the like senior level executive position at a growth stage company, and I've got all the side projects. The podcast, not spending as much time, but always some other creative venture. I always have to do that. Closet creative, want to be an artist, dad wouldn't let me. But you were different. This is so you. I met my then girlfriend, now wife, at work at Procter, right? And she wound up leaving before me. And that's what drove me out to New York. You met your partner at school, started your career. Had like, can you unpack like the early kind of stages of your family journey and how that paralleled with your work, so we can then so people can know how we're comparing and contrasting our POVs?
For sure. Yeah. And I already see a common thing here that we're going to get to, but, and by the way, we're going to break the fourth wall all over the place in this thing. This is,
Yeah. This is Deadpool / She-Hulk all the time. Let's go.
I'd say my personality is kind of a goal-driven, strategic personality. Once I know where I want to go, I'm going to go there. And so in dating back to college, I was not dating to just have fun or, put notches in the bedpost or something. I was looking for a woman I would spend the rest of my life with. I mean, that was in high school. I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
And I managed, through an introduction from a great mutual friend, met my wife on a blind date summer between our junior and senior years in college. And it was like love at first sight. And we were off to the races. We both, in part of the early, discussions, was we both wanted to have children. And so we had children pretty early, early in. I think we were 26 when we had our first child, 30 when we had our second, and that was the plan. And
you had your first kid at your first job at Procter, right?
It was first job out of business school. So
okay. Oh yeah, you were in
the first job where I was like, again, and even that job was part of a career stepping stone, a goal toward having my own company someday. So I think that and I tie it back to your point on a family as a startup. I love that idea. That might be the title here, but it is, I think, best done as a conscious decision.
Yeah.
And, I was ready, we were doing it. And I was like, well, what are we waiting for? And I even had a little bit of, I used to tell people, I've told people this for, so many years of, by the time I'm 50, I'm going to have 2 kids and out of, into or out of college. And then, we're going to be empty nesters and kind of do whatever we want. So it was even a strategy of, if we know, then we'll have more quality time later in life for us to do whatever, which we kind of do now.
Yeah.
We played golf all day yesterday together.
And I hate you so much for it. But yeah.
So back to you. I think you had some strategy as well.
Well, yeah, yes and no. So, I've had many previous old friends, previous girlfriends. I've always been like an old man at heart. Like I've always been a 40-year-old. I knew, I think I wanted a family, and I didn't know what I wanted to do career-wise, right? Like I wasn't as goal-driven because I thought I wanted to be an artist. Dad said I couldn't, for all the kind of immigrant parent reasons. And I got a scholarship to do engineering, did some defense contracting, didn't like it, right? And I very quickly learned I wanted to get out of the South where I grew up for a bunch of reasons. And so I went back to business school just because I got a scholarship. I was aimless, man. On the side, I did, web and graphic design for like beer and travel money. And this company called Procter and Gamble saw that I did that. And literally, I got selected to do an interview. And I moved to Cincinnati, and that was the big city, and that was a big company. And I was working with all these international people. And I was like, okay, this is cool. And, I dated some, but I had some, and I always went to serious relationships as well. Like I was always trying to find the one, the kind of closet romantic, listening to emo music in the 90s. But it never was working out. I wasn't finding that, and dated around while I was in Cincy, and stuff didn't work. Right. And then I found the partner who was a very close friend of mine. Now, what's interesting is we were friends for 2 years before we started dating. And to me, that's code for we tried dating and she wasn't into me. And, but then the more we
men and women can't be friends.
I'm saying that Raman makes his move on the 12th date and is always unsuccessful.
Yeah.
No, but I just, but it was like a slow burn, and I married a very close friend, right? Or I started dating a very close friend. and she wasn't sure if she wanted to get married. I knew I had this quote unquote plan, not as defined as yours, but it's like I
Yeah.
had these aspirations for what my personal life would be. And that's informed by your own parents, but also pop culture, what you're consuming. Because for me, I was kid of immigrants, absorbing a lot of what American culture was, not from my parents, but from the popular media, the romantic comedies, the French dramas about relationships, the Three Colors trilogy, all these weird things, right? And emo music at the same time. So I
Yeah.
was messed up, but I had a goal. And but she was like, yeah, maybe let's see where this goes. And I knew sooner that I think she was the one. However, and this is interesting. I've talked to my best friend about this, and he has been through multiple marriages. I'll just leave it at that. But we talked a lot about this idea of deal breakers. What are the deal breakers?
Hmm.
And someone could be like, oh, smoking, religion, blah 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 blah, blah all these things. Star Wars versus Star Trek. But my partner was also the child of immigrants, so that actually settled a lot of the deal breakers I'd had with previous partners who were
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote American, um, or like their parents were from here. Um, but the other thing, and I thought a deal breaker was kids.
Hmm.
I wanted kids, and my partner, who again, this is now at the point where we are pretty serious, and
Mm-hmm.
we're moving in together. I'm moving overseas. She's following and living with me overseas. We're putting our careers on hold for each other. Like I'd made so many moves in those early corporate years. We both did for each other versus our career, and so we knew, okay, this was possibly going to marriage. Cool. Eventually, and it took a while, slow burn. But in that path, found out maybe she didn't want to have kids, and I did. And I remember that moment. I think we were living in Asia, or we just gotten back, and I'm making the decision to follow her out to New York. And we're not even married at this point. But I was like reconciling. Okay, I think I found the one. I don't believe that there is any one the one. We just kind of find good fits, like co-founders, so to speak. Um, but okay, and it's hard. It's hard to find a one, the one. And I
Mm-hmm.
found one, but she might not want to have kids. And I had to reconcile in that moment. Okay, I'm going to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'll win her over, but I could not go into the decision to settle down with I'm going to win her over later, because candidly I've had friends and that's caused the dissolution of relationships. So I made my
But you
peace with
did,
it.
gonna stop you. You did make a
Yeah.
conscious decision. She is gonna be. I would like her to be my one, even if
Yes.
she doesn't have
Yes.
kids. Like I can
Yes.
be okay with that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And and so we go down the path, right? Like follow her out to New York. We're married a year or so later. Um
And I'm
and we'd
sorry. Can I
already
go
lived over.
back? Did you
Yeah.
talk about kids before? And she was similar to getting married. Like we'll see.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But she was like, I'm not sure. It wasn't I don't want it. It was I'm not sure.
Got it.
And you can't make a commitment for life on I'm not sure if you're on the opposite side of that, right?
Assume
A,
it's not going to work out in your in
exa-
to your
plan for
preference.
the worst, hope for the best.
Yeah.
Plan for
There
the
you
worst,
go.
hope for the best. And so I follow her out to New York, and again by this point we'd already lived overseas. We'd already traveled quite a bit. Um, we then have all sorts of adventures in the city, around the world, visiting friends. Um, a very close friend and mentor offered me to join his startup after getting tired of corporate. I mean, with corporate, there was chances to go move overseas, and I remember going to Paris and staying at friends' apartments and going out on the bar scene with our other friends who were in Paris. Like this, hey, this could be the next 5 years of our life. That didn't work
Yeah.
out. You and I joined you, and we did stuff, and I was all over the place. And somewhere in the middle of that, and this is where it gets interesting. Somewhere in the middle of that, she was like, and she's a few years younger than me. Hey, I think maybe let's go for this. Like this family thing. I was like, oh my God, like I'm coming back from a work trip, emptying out my backpack and putting new clothes in to get ready to go on another trip.
Yeah.
And around that time, I feel like, again, you and I had this really good relationship where I talked to you about work stuff. I knew about your family, how old your kids were. And I asked like, oh man, I think if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go all in. And you're like, well, when I didn't slow down. I was like, well, hey man, I'm older, and it was hard for us to, man, when you're a teenager, I mean, if you touch someone of the opposite sex, you make a baby. That's how we are wired.
Yeah.
But when you're older, in your 30s, it's harder, and
Mm-hmm.
it's heartbreaking. We don't talk about that.
Mm.
And it was heartbreakingly hard to have a kid, and we eventually, my partner, she got pregnant, and I was with you at our first company, Ahology, or our first company together, Ahology, my first startup, right?
Yep.
And I remember coming to you in the office. I think we went for a walk to the coffee shop, across the street. And it's like, hey man, this happened. And by the way, something we discovered once we got the good news, there was a possible medical issue with
Mm-hmm.
my daughter, and everything wound up fine. But at the time, it wasn't going to be fine, and we had to go see specialists and all these things. And I was like, hey man, I need to make every doctor's appointment. I got to be all in on this because we've been going through hell trying to have a kid, and now the moment is here. And you were like, well, and I don't want to dismiss where you were coming from. You're like, well, it's not everything, but for me, it's an important difference of opinion. For me, it's like, no, this has got to be my everything. Like, um, this is, I wasn't the founder of your company. I was
Mm-hmm.
a key lieutenant in the company, and I
Mm-hmm.
loved being there. I loved being part of it. I loved the team. Some of the I'm still close. So many of my great work relationships, including the one with you and the folks I met there, have sustained to this day. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a part of my life. But I was like, this is the bigger part of my life. This thing is 2 to 3 years, maybe 5 years. This other thing, um, is the next 50 years of my life coming
Yeah.
up, and I'm laying the foundation, and I don't want to do it wrong. But around a couple years later, I heard the comedian Roy Wood Jr. probably say something that was closer to you. So Roy Wood Jr., former correspondent for The Daily Show, has a show on CNN now. He's from the South, like me. Um, he grinded it for so long, doing lots of things, and finally he hit his moment. He's on The Daily Show. He's getting calls. He's able to go on tour. But he had a kid around the same time as me.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, I think he was talking to Terry Gross. He was like, and he was a black man, right? And he was like, look, as a father to a black kid, it's more important that I'm really there in kind of adolescent and teens,
Mm-hmm.
and that I have the infrastructure in place to shield and protect my family and all these things. So like, and he's like, I'm at this unique moment where I can crush it, like literally financial security, economic security, all of this for his family.
Yeah.
It's like, and if that means I'm on the Daily Show every day, I'm touring on the weekends, filming a Netflix special, boom, 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 podcasts left and right. He's like, if that means I gotta hustle for 1, 2, 5 years, I gotta do it now to achieve my escape velocity. And to be clear, he's in a different creative and economic weight class than me and probably you, but at the same time, he was recently he was on Mike Birbiglia's podcast. He was on Hassan Minaj's podcast, and I've listened to him talk about family and his role, right, and his career. And my fear is once you start that career driven, and some people have it. This is where I know I'm not a founder. I'm a founder of my own creative venture, my own family venture.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go build an ad tech company on my own. But once you have that, you can't let go. Once you lock into that goal that you've had career wise, Bob, or other folks,
Yeah.
as a founder, as someone who signs the what is it? You sign the front of checks. I sign the back of checks. This guy always says, right? But I remember you would stress about all the stresses and the ups and downs of our business. You had to make payroll for us, right?
Right.
Because if you didn't do your job right, I didn't have rent, right?
Yeah. Well,
Or
can I stop you there,
yeah,
because I
yeah,
want to go way back, because this is
yeah,
feedback for me. I mean, this
yeah,
is really interesting. We've never talked about this. So we had the coffee meeting.
yeah.
You're stop. I'm trying to say this the right way. Like you're trying to say, hey, Bob, I may need to back off on the amount of energy I'm
Mm-hmm.
putting into this work.
Yeah.
And what you took away from me was that you probably don't have to go to all the tests and things like that. Like you can still do it.
Not the tests, but it was
Whatever.
the
Like, or the
yeah.
what I can't exactly remember, but I think when I've heard things, like if again I could be wrong, who knows what
Yeah, it's all good,
it's
man.
on a videotape, but this is great. So I, I think when I heard something like that, and I've had similar conversations, I'm more in the friend mode versus the
Yeah,
boss mode.
yeah.
And the friend mode is like, hey, I've been there. Like, don't overstress about
Don't over. Yeah.
feeling like you need to be there for everything.
Uh-huh.
That's because I've already been there, and I realize, like, like here's an example, and this is a great,
Yeah.
maybe a real, not the exact example here, but like a general example is someone would say, I think I need to take 3 months paternity leave.
Yeah.
And if that was what you needed to say, like,
Yeah.
I would like the friend Bob would go, really? If like a mutual friend said that, like, hey, Bob, I need your advice as a friend. I think I need to take 3 months paternity leave because I know there's going to be a lot to do. And I'd be like, dude, you're probably going to get bored after 3 weeks, and you're going to get in the way. And this is
Uh-huh.
don't just assume that's true,
Mm-hmm.
at least.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the boss hat, if I was to say that, would be like, oh, this guy doesn't want me to take my leave, and he's worried about what's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen to his company and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And probably like thinking the Maslow's hierarchy. I'm just spitballing here,
Yeah,
but like
please.
in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like what are you afraid of? I talk a lot about like, in my little model of high performance organization, we're in a boat together,
Mm-hmm.
and it's floating on the ocean, and
Mm-hmm.
fear is the hull of the boat. And so
Mm-hmm.
the sail is like the fun energy, here we go.
Yeah.
So if there's a hole in the boat, everyone's thinking about there's a hole in the boat. They don't care where the rudder is, they don't care if the wind's good, they don't
Mm-hmm.
care about the treasure, on the
Mm-hmm.
horizon. Like, oh shit, like I got to worry about this leaking boat. And so again, for you in that case, your
Mm-hmm.
thought was like, oh, Bob's afraid of this, or he's trying to dissuade me from doing that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Am I right there? Do you think that's kind of
Well,
what
first, I
happened?
love the metaphor. I love how, I mean, the metaphor. Usually, when I do metaphors like that, they break down completely, and so it's good that you have that. And I'm
Well,
totally stealing that. I wasn't thinking about you other than, and that race podcast I do, Modern Minorities.
yes.
The log line I use is minority voices for all of our majority ears, because we're all equal parts minority, equal parts majority. We all have lived experiences that the other doesn't. I think one way to make this world better, I don't even mean that politically, I mean business, everything, is like if you can just seek to understand someone who's coming from a different place.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we spent so much time on the backstory, why I wanted to, like, you coming into your family mode and me coming into my family mode, your decision to get there faster than mine, right? Like we had waited so long, and we were in kind of a now or never mode with it. So, but you were coming at it from the other side. And by the way, as a friend, Bob, I was. It's so weird. Like you and I have this. That there was that one moment in time, right, where in a previous existence you were friend turned mentor, back to friend, now boss, and now for a brief moment in time you were all of those things, or we were all
Mm-hmm.
of those things to each other, and I was your employee helping you hit your goal, right? um and that's tricky. It's so tricky to navigate because we're literally having to code switch on each other all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe you thought you were being friend Bob, but I'm like, at the same time you're boss Bob, and I'm kind of asking to take a few months off or stop being on the road. And no matter how much you logically tell yourself, oh, he's telling me this as a friend, you're still hearing it the other way. It's all informing. So that, I mean, if there's one like career learning, I do think you should work with your friends, but I think it's the other way around. Similar to a relationship. I'm all over the place, but I'll come back to your fear
Yeah.
thing in a second.
Keep going.
I think friends and relationships. Let's start there and then bring it to professional. I remember being in college. I went to an academic boarding school for high school, like a Hogwarts for nerds, Alabama School of Math and Science. And I remember my first year, my roommate was a friend, and by the end of it, we hated each other. And the second year, and then in college, another doing it, I roomed with a guy I kind of knew, but was okay, and we became friends, right? So, relationship. Um, the ones that have always worked out the best is where 12th date ramen, 12th date make a move ramen is like, I'm gonna become a friend and then cross the chasm. I'm gonna
Mm.
build it to the next thing. Now, with work relationships, and you and I have stood the test of time in all the best and worst ways, but net positive for us. Um, we became friends first and then started working together. And I know you like to do that, and you recruited a lot of the folks you trusted and liked in many of your ventures.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's dangerous. I'm not saying it can't be done, but LinkedIn is littered with the bodies of like friends that I've recruited friends
Oh
to
yeah.
work for me, as well. I'm there with you. Versus you come to work with these people, you've never met them before, you kind of know them maybe, and then the bonds become stronger. So I think in any relationship, friendship, romantic, professional, to like achieve like liftoff and to get to that next level, you are almost always safer by starting from the lower position and moving to the higher aspirational position,
Mm.
because there's so much risk, because all the baggage, like we were friends and we're having this awkward conversation, fear, hopes, dreams, kids. I'm looking at you. You had a very different experience than I did, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I know the kind of work your dad did, and you talk about him like him being on the road and stuff. My dad being an immigrant, like I remember after dinner, him going on locking the door in his office. And I've asked him now as an adult, what were you doing? We have an open plan house, so I kind of do that now, but my daughter sees what I'm doing. My dad was like, I was like running the numbers on our finances to make it work, like pinching every penny and da da da. And the stress he was bearing, um, I so I think about that conversation with you in fear. I wasn't looking at your fear, I was looking at mine, and maybe trying to see, look, man, I don't think anything is created equal in this universe either. Like, I think if I this is going to get me in trouble with HR. If you kind of want that stability, right?
Yeah.
Don't go to an early stage startup,
Right.
like, or a
Exactly.
growth stage. That's a
Even if
terrible
it's
thing
for a
to say.
really good friend.
Even if it's for a really good friend, because, and man, my sister got on to me and my wife got on to me. There was a moment, I don't know if I communicate this to you. I got to make sure we stay completely anonymous on this, but like, friend of a friend, uh, had professional experience that could have been a fit for us, candidly. And, we needed that role. This is the thing you and I were doing.
Uh-huh.
And I found out that friend of a friend through the mutual friend, obviously was a great fit. I knew him, knew their talent, blah, blah, blah. That they were going to be starting a family soon. And I think this is pre me being in my moment, right?
Hmm.
And I was like, oh man, like, you know what the numbers were better than I were back in the day. Like, it was, quarter to quarter, year to year, right?
Yep.
And I remember like, oh, man, I don't know if it's a fit. And I remember my wife and my sister leaning, and this was such a lesson learned. She's like, Raman, it's not your decision, it's their decision to make, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, but it was like, no, no, no. And I really had internally, because I was coming at it from the point of view of as a dude, not a father, right?
Yeah.
And I remember my partner telling me, she was like, how would you feel if someone did that to me? I was like, oh man, it's an amazing role to work with these amazing people, potential escape velocity, options and equity, and all this stuff, right? And I think when we had our company, most of the people at our company at the time either already had their kids, right? Like, they were adolescent or teens or approaching empty nest.
Or
I'm thinking
basically
through the
we're
name.
kids.
Yeah, yeah.
Coming right out of college.
Yeah, it was one of those two. You either had kids and you'd already done that part of your life, but there were no young parents at our company at the time,
No.
as I recall. Like, one
Not for
guy
a
had
while.
two young adolescents, but they were kind of coming up. Him and his partner had their pattern. And by the way, his partner had a stable corporate job. My partner also had a stable corporate job, right? Uh, the benefits were better on my wife's plan than ours. Coming back to that moment, so I think it was I'm all over the place. I apologize, but like,
I'm gonna reel you in here
your
in a
lived
second.
experience was so different on whatever fear or baggage you carried or didn't carry. And for me, I was like, hey, yo, man, I don't think you get where I'm coming from. Not like I don't think you're giving me what I want, but like, my lived experience is different than yours.
Yeah.
And I hear you. It probably isn't that big of a deal, but I'm freaking out, man. I was like, I'm freaking out. We got to go to like these specialists
Yeah.
where the waiting room was way too nice because it's a very expensive specialist, like all of these things.
But can I
And I mean, we haven't even,
let me
yeah,
reel you
good.
back in here and just kind of
Yeah, please.
try to capture this, because I think there's a key point you're hitting on, which is friendship and company,
Yeah.
together can be amazing, and it will be amazing, and it will be
Mm-hmm.
awful. Like, just
Mm-hmm.
bank on that. And almost, if I could go back in time and say that, because I think about that example of that conversation of you saying, I've had many, many conversations like that of people saying, I need to go take another job. I need to be
Yeah.
off
Yeah.
for 4 months. I can't work a day over. And my attitude was always, whatever you need,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it was like, okay, here's a human. They're coming to me. I can't guess what their real life is like. I can't get in
Mm-hmm.
the way, but a friend, I can kind of either, I know enough to be dangerous, literally,
Mm-hmm.
about your life. And I think there is a real bias. So,
Mm-hmm.
there's situations where I treated you like shit, and ways that I would never do with anyone
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
And it was like, the friendship does that. I had my version of your story is, I worked for my best friend at our
Yeah.
agency.
Yeah.
And I remember when I took the job, his wife told me, "You're going to go work for him? Really?" I was like, "Yeah." she's basically like, he's an asshole to work for. That's what she was
Yeah.
signaling to me.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
her own wife. And he was an asshole to work for. Because he hated his job. And we had a point, a couple years in where we were just going at it in a one-on-one. And he basically said, he had lit me up. I wrote about this a year or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
ago. Like, he lit me up in a meeting in front of 30 people, being a complete asshole, which he would never do to anyone else. He was like this perfectly guarded actor, with anyone else. And, the next day he gave me a mild apology and then heatedly said, this right out of his mouth, I hired you so that I don't have to worry about your feelings. And I was
There's
like,
something
okay.
there.
But then the sad thing is, I did that to a couple of people, my friends. I don't think it's bad.
We're all human.
But I caught myself doing that. And Jeff, if you're out there listening, you're another one who suffered.
Oh man, I didn't say Jeff's name. He was one of the people I was referring to, of just like a parallel story. But I remember there was a moment. We're just doing so many flashbacks, and we haven't even talked about the practice of the family. So we got to get into that in a second.
Yeah,
but
okay.
I remember being 16 or 17. One of my childhood friends, to this day, this kid is the best friend I referred to earlier, right? We're at his parents' house. We're playing Mario Kart, and we would also Indian American. We'd go get some soda or something after playing Mario Kart, and his dad would be at the kitchen table, and he'd want to talk to us and lecture us. And really smart dude, but kind of a jerk sometimes about stuff. But I remember he was like, "So, Raman, what do you want to do? When college is coming up, what are you gonna do?" And I was at the same time having these parallel conversations about I want to be an artist, art school, graphic design. But my dad doesn't want to let me do it, and all my friends say I'm so good, I should do a portfolio and all these things. And I remember Uncle telling me, Raman, the role of your friends is to tell you what you want to hear. The role of your family, and close personal friends, people who are like family, is to tell you what you don't want to hear. And man, that stuck. I mean, that hit me like a bolt of lightning. So many other things Uncle has done, I've dismissed because for all the right reasons. He was wrong, I was right. But that is one of those things he was so right about. And you and me, I'm not trying to be like Vin Diesel and say family, but like we had closer bonds because we'd been, I remember being super depressed about what I'm doing with corporate multiple times, running to you at a castle in France, right? Like literally you and I at a castle in France, or
Chateau,
I got
it's called.
It was a chateau. Yes. There was bocce and balls and wine. But I was in a funk, and you didn't talk me off a cliff, but you kind of just told me what I needed to hear. There was another moment flying back to Cincinnati for a friend's wedding. I just come back from China. I'm thinking about leaving big company. You were building your thing. This was before you even started the recruiting game. And I remember I ran into you on the flight, like boarding the flight at LaGuardia, and you seeing I was kind of in a funk. Like I was just kind of in a funk, and I played it off, but I think I knew you could see through it. I wear the mask well, just like all of us, but you know me better. And, you have XYZ medallion status, and I was in steerage in the back. But I remember on that flight, you came to the back, and I feel like you sat with me, and we talked for a few minutes. And you went straight to the point, man. And like, I don't even remember. John Pepper says a lot. It's not what you say or do, it's how you make people feel. And I think people you are close with, for better and worse, right? You can make me feel great, or you can get straight to the heart of the matter and tell me the ugly truth.
Yeah.
Maybe the ugly truth that I don't want. And I do that with people too, but those you are close with will do that to you. But when you mix that with work, that's a dangerous, risky cocktail. You are playing with nitroglycerin, in my opinion. I'm not saying don't do it, because you can use that to like rocket fuel to the sky, but there's a lot of other things that rockets can do. But I think we will tell each other the hard truths. I almost wonder if I didn't do that enough with you, because, and I don't know if it's like I'm not deferential necessarily to elders. I mean, I've got the immigrant thing, like respect your elders, all that stuff. But, you were like an older brother to me. Or uncle, cool uncle, whatever you want to say, because you're not that much older than me, but you are.
Let's go with older brother.
Cool uncle, cool uncle. No, but
cool young uncle from a second family.
yeah. Stepbrother. But well, you're not that much older than me. You started the life stage advancement faster than me, right? So you might be like, call it we're like probably 5 or 6 years apart. Yeah. But based on when you and your partner started their family, got the kids, started the first company, did the first you did so many of those life stage things way before me. You ejected from corporate much faster than I did, right? I think you were
Yes.
like 3 or 4 years, and I did 2 corporate gigs, so about 10 or 11 years. Um, anyway, all that being said, is I take what you have said to me over the years with a little bit more weight, for better and worse. Like when you lit into me in a meeting. I remember I wanted to like try to switch to product or something, and you knew that I wasn't a product guy. I remember you telling, and you lit me up, and I just kind of went back to my desk cowering. I remember going back on the flight. I was like, I'm ready to head back to New York and just go drink at the airport.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't know if it's because of that elder relationship, mentor, mentee, manager, that I wasn't willing to light back into you. Now, as an adult, I do that now. Like I have no problem speaking truth to power. I
Hmm.
don't have quite the economic security because I was lower on the cap table than you, but my wife and I are pretty good. We're not great, but we're good. And I'm now in a position. I always love working for co-founders, right, or CEOs. That's my sweet spot. Don't want to be the co-founder CEO. Love reporting to them, and I will agree to disagree, because it's not that I don't have anything to lose. I like my job. I want to keep my job, but I'm going to make the principled argument for what I think is right. I will shut up and row if I need to. Like we're in the middle of a couple of those right now.
Yeah.
But there's like this mutual respect, and I think 5 years from now, when I'm no longer at my current company, I hope the CEO and other members of the lead team will be my close friends, and I can jump on a podcast with them. But we're in it, and that's the other piece. Back then, you and me having that conversation. Yes, you were giving me friend advice, but we were in it, and that was the business was good, but I think we were approaching a low point, as I recall, right? Like,
Oh
or
yeah.
it was. Anyway, I don't know,
Well,
man.
yeah.
I
I mean,
guess
I think
with
that's
great power
another
comes great responsibility.
key part, and maybe as you think about back to the, I'm interested. One topic that you allude to that I think we should hit on is um, how your, let's just say, father, because we're both fathers here, how your father influenced your career,
Mm.
and how is that, which we've heard a little bit about, and then how is that now influencing how you start to think about guiding your kids? They're pretty young, but do you
Yeah.
have a strategy yet? Do you have thoughts of, here's what I would do differently now, or the same
Yeah.
in your
I've
own
been consuming.
personal startup family?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've been
Because
consuming. I
just
have a
like in your
recency.
career, you got to learn from us. Like, so if I was the
Yeah.
uncle, whatever, that's
Yeah.
it was my startup. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you were a child of our startup, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
This analogy is weird, but
Yeah.
so you
Stick
weren't
with the boat.
the
Stick with the boat
parents.
metaphors, Bob.
It was me
Yeah.
and the co-founder, for a while,
Yeah.
Michael. Like we were mom and dad, and you're one of the kids. You know, to keep the
It's more like a
analogy with that.
foster home. It's more
Yeah,
like a foster home.
we're a crazy foster home with people escaping and getting in trouble, getting arrested.
There were
Uh,
no arrests that I know of. No,
anyway, and then but like
yeah,
now you've got your own. You started that was your first entrepreneurial
yeah.
event. Was becoming a parent, and now you're there. Let's take the business startup analogy.
Yeah, yeah.
What you learned some things for me in the company wise as for your future companies, and one of them is maybe not go into early stage, be the
Yeah,
a
yeah.
right hand of the co-founders.
Mhm.
um, so now how about parents, like being in your mom and dad's startup, now
Mhm,
you've
mhm.
got your own. What are some things maybe especially in career stuff, which I think
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
important?
Well, I think you the one of those moments where I think I hit maturity was my second corporate job. I had a boss that I didn't like, and it was you or someone else at the time told me, and you've said this on the pod as well on your Substack. Even if you're in a bad situation, you can learn from it. You're learning what to do and what not to do. So you and Michael, that boss at the time at my second corporate gig, my current boss, my parents, right? What to do, what not to do. I always face a little recency bias on what I'm consuming. This I've been I just literally last night watched Mike Birbiglia's The Good Life, comedian. He does more like one man show style storytelling about his life, and I've been watching his podcast a lot, working on it, working it out or something. And he said something, and he unpacked it on the podcast, and he said it's one of his core moments in that pod about his own relationship with his dad and his daughter. And he's like, you've got to, he realized with his father and all this stuff he was trying to do with his father, um, I was trying to make him like me, like not like me, like love me, but like be like me. Why can't he be like me versus understanding who he is. And he was like, that's the same thing with your kid. You cannot say, I'm going to make my kid do these things, fulfill all of my living vicariously, things I didn't do, right? No, 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 no. Your job as a parent is to discover who they are and help them be the best version of that, right? Um, because look, man, I'm going to be dead in X years, and my daughter and my son are going to be out in the world by themselves. And either I can be one of those like, oh, I learned what not to do from dad, or I learned what to do, how to approach the situation. And there's no like word lessons I can give. And I think about this a lot because they're not listening to you. You can tell them all the things and give them all the lectures like Uncle Ben, but they're looking at who you are and how you behave and how you act in traffic when someone cuts you off. I was sitting here on a call with my podcast co-host Sharon. We were just talking about some business stuff, some podcast stuff. My daughter's sitting right over there, just doing her little math lessons after camp, but she's listening, she's watching, because she'll play it back a month later at the dinner table, like, "Oh, hey, what happened with you and Miss Sharon? Or is Mr. Dan going to be okay?" Like they're listening and they're watching, and that's been the biggest lesson. And I'm failing, man. There are moments I have. A kind of a hot take. South Asians, we can be very hot tempered. That's a stereotype, and I'll say it. In my family, loud voices, a lot of yelling, a lot of shouting, more bark than bite, right? And I'm carrying some of that over. I've gotten that from my parents, and man, my daughter shut me down the other day. I was like getting on to her, lighting her up about something, and I was like, "Why don't you listen? Why are you coming off the handle about blah blah blah?" 9-year-old little girl, and she's like, "Dad," and it was such like a sitcom. She's like, "I'm learning it from you." She said that. She's like, "I do it because you do it." I was like, "Whoa, well, first of all, I'm not your equal,
From
but
the
at the same
voice
time,
of
yeah."
babes.
Oh my god! I mean, I was like, I walked out and I walked back to her room and I apologized. I sat down on her bed. I just apologized. I was like, "You're right. I have work to do." But, and then this is where I flipped it on her. I was like, "But my goal is for you to be better than me. All the
Yeah.
things I do well, you're going to do better than me. All the things I don't do well, you're going to learn." And blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know if she took that to heart. I think she was like, I won. I shut Dad down. But I think that's, maybe I'm remembering this moment more than she would. But that's the one I think the most about Bob, like, is it's how I show up. It's not what I say. It's, it's
Yeah.
how I make them feel about what are mom and dad doing? How are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, you make me think in a couple ways. First of all, I completely agree. I was such an observant little kid. Again, maybe more or less, I can't compare myself to others,
Yeah.
but I would analyze, what are my parents saying at the dinner table? My dad talking about hating his boss at the dinner table. Oh, this guy, like, ooh, are we going to run out of money? Or why does he hate his boss? What's going on? Like I was just totally observing that. And that's one of the things that I think that point of you notice and then you remember as a parent, okay, I need to not do that because I remember what it felt like, the stress, that came from that. Like you try to be better than your parents. I mean, that's just a rule. Like no parents are perfect.
Right.
And you'll make all new mistakes that they'll have to go to therapy for. But I think that's key. And I think similarly in companies where, I realized, ironically from my friend who was my boss, he was just a big believer that you're always on stage. How you walk around the office. If you have a big frown on your face, when you sit down, everyone around you, it's contagious. They, consciously and unconsciously. My dad, again, another irony of ironies here, or whatever, synchronicities, but my dad gave me a really expensive, nice Rolex watch when I graduated from high school. And it was his kind of thing of like, he never had anything and he loved Rolexes, and he gave my sister and each one of these. And I liked it. I wasn't like showing it off, but I wore it. And I remember at that agency, a guy who worked for me like made some kind of like, oh, not everybody has a Rolex. I was like, oh shit. And I just, the next day, I haven't worn it since because I didn't need it to show off. It was more of like, oh, I'm sending a big negative signal out that I'm rich or wealthy or better or the kind of guy who has to show that he's got expensive shit. And once you see that in yourself, it's like, the things come down. But one thing I think you make me think about too is I know I yelled at my kids too much. I mean, in a weird way, like I know that if I had kids now, there'd be a lot of other downsides, but I've gotten better as a
Yeah.
person, you know, like, oh, I wish I knew so much now back then. I could have been a better parent, more mature. Like we keep
Yeah, but I
maturing,
mean,
your
I think
wisdom adds up.
I think it's as long as, because time is linear, time is not a lake. Like I would hope everything gets better, right? We get smarter, we get better as humans, as relationships go. Because I would rather be doing that than the opposite direction, getting worse. And you definitely don't want to be stagnant. I think with kids, I think the reason kids are so much more resilient, and that reminds me, I want to ask you and your audience a question about something related to kids and values. But they're so much more resilient than we are, right? They internalize the trauma, but they're to use this number, they're dry sponges. They're soaking up everything because they have, like you and I, like we've absorbed so much, we've experienced so much at this phase in our career, life, parenthood. And so therefore our cup is pretty full, our sponge is pretty saturated. So you say something and maybe you'll drop 10 pieces of knowledge, but only one's going to make it in because my cup is pretty full, right, of other stuff that I've heard, other podcasts, other bosses, other mentors, all these things, other books.
Mm-hmm.
Our kids are empty sponges, man. They haven't read the books, they haven't seen the films, they haven't had the long podcast conversations with an old boss. So everything is new. And so that delta is so everything is so much bigger to them. Like time moves so much slower for them. Our time is moving so fast
Mm-hmm.
because, and my friend Rajiv, the comedian, I think he says this a lot, like from a pure fraction standpoint, one day is one day. Like my son is 4, just to do easy math. So 4 times 365, 7 2, about 1,500. That's one of 1,500 days is every day for my son.
Yeah.
Add a zero to that for me. It's one of every
Right.
15,000 for me. So my experiences are like microseconds, but for them, these are eras. Like my daughter's summer vacation right now at camp feels like the longest thing ever for her.
Uh-huh.
And my wife and I are like, holy crap, camp's over. Like we have school's about to start by the school. Like, and because of that, time is moving slower. Their cup is emptier. So everything's absorbed so much deeper. They might be able to bounce it off because, well, whatever, day to day. But I think it's penetrating so much deeper into who they are. And man,
Mm.
that freaks me out when I think about it from the responsibility of the things I have to do. But I'm like, and versus the startup, to kind of play the original topic, like,
Yeah.
man, our startup, our work, our day-to-day job are so ethereal. It matters, and it matters in the moment. I think it's Tolstoy says, like, the most important thing you're doing is the thing you're doing right now. Fully believe that. But man, this company I was at after yours, I wanted to get off the road. I took some time off after my daughter was born, and then I needed a job that wasn't going to be on the road. And my friend Seth,
Mm-hmm.
shout out to Seth, like I was interviewing at startups, and I ran into him in a coffee shop. He said, "Why don't you come talk to us?" And I had to work really hard for him, but I got the benefit of not being on the road and being able to make it home for dinner and bedtime with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember in that role, there were some really late nights powering through some deck for sales, and I remember drinking whiskey and listening to the Beastie Boys and just like powering through it. I don't remember. You could pay me $1,000,000, Bob, and I could not tell you what that deck was about.
No.
It was something for sales. I remember I was listening to Paul's Boutique and I was drinking Woodford Woods. I remember how I felt in the moment
Yeah.
making the deck. I, for the life of me, cannot remember the words on that page. I don't even remember the effect of that deck on the business because it was ethereal. But I vividly can remember the space I was in. Did it? The book I
Yeah.
read my daughter that night,
Yeah.
it's how you feel. It's not what you did. It doesn't fucking matter. Like even with kids though, even with the family, I don't. You ask me in 2 months, I'm not going to remember what that thing I was getting on to her about, and what I remember her pushing back on me. I don't know what the offense was, um, and so I think I'm trying to center myself in all the details don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It's the how you carry yourself, how you make other people feel in the moment, how you felt coming out of it. What did you learn coming out of it? All these lessons that you and I have talked about. I mean, I do remember that one meeting where you yelled at me, and you remember that one meeting where your boss yelled at you. You probably remember what that one was about because that one stung.
I know.
But most of the stuff, I remember walking around the block with Jeff multiple times. I don't know what him and I were talking about half the time, but I remember feeling like really warm and part of something in that conversation. And so I think the way I have to show up, and man, now as a boss, like I've got more than a handful of direct reports at different life stages. I don't think about that enough. How am I making them feel? I'm so
Yeah.
focused on getting the job done. I'm
But I
making
think
all the
that's,
mistakes.
and again, I think similar, there's a lot around you learn as a parent. I think if you can keep taking, just as we said, they're looking at me, the little things as a parent. So are your employees. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
there's a, it's probably not the same percent hours kind of thing, but there is like a
Yeah.
power dynamic. This is my
Yeah.
parent. They're the
Hmm.
one, I live in their house. I see them every day. I depend on them for everything. Similar for employees,
This is the beginning of
is
my
there going to be a
career.
layoff? Is there going to,
Yeah.
do they like me or not? Like all those, you know, it, it triggers childhood memories and traumas and dynamics and pleasing factors and all those
Hmm.
things come
Hmm.
together. But let me go back to something that we haven't hit on yet that you're also kind of touching is things like working late at night
Hmm.
is um, the topic of, you know, the work-life integration balance, whatever
Sure.
you want to call it. In our pre-notes, we were talking about time on the road and being
Hmm.
away.
Hmm.
Um, I'll just tell you my story and love to
Yeah.
hear your strategy. Even though for you know, my kids being born, I was in a launching new categories at Procter and Gamble.
Hmm.
Um, then I had, my own agency, which was, I kind of came in and it was going to hell and I had to fix it, help fix it and turn it around. And then we grew at an incredible pace, had an earn out giant number
Hmm.
to hit. Then I did a real startup.
Hmm.
I was
That's
still,
wait, that one inflection point, really quick.
yeah,
The earnout moment, with the WPP thing, the large agency holdco earnout.
yeah.
How old were your kids at that moment? From with that
Yeah.
range till you founding and doing the seed round at our startup.
Um, call it under 10 at the agency. And then, they're just like 2.5 years apart. And then
Yeah.
into 11s, 12s,
So the
teens
startup, so
at
the
the
apology years,
startup.
all the ups and downs, like that second roller coaster,
Yeah,
where you were more on the line, you were signing the checks even more in a bigger way, right? Because it's just you and your
sure.
bank account,
Yeah. I was the CEO
from
eventually.
the
Yeah.
investors versus the other thing was agency, right? Company.
Yeah.
Um,
But let me get,
those are the
so
teenage years. Teenage years,
yeah.
though.
So
Okay.
I was at home for dinner every night,
Mm-hmm.
all four of us. I took the kids to school
Mm-hmm.
every day on the way into the office. It was like an hour to get to their school.
Yeah. Yeah.
They never drove themselves. We bought a car. They never learned to drive until they went to college. It's still hit or miss. Sorry, girls, it's true. Uh, so like here I am. Everyone says. My point is, I didn't even like consciously put up walls. It was like, this is what it is.
Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't have to be crazy. And I think I have a hypothesis, and maybe again for the audience out there, like the other day I was coming back from Cannes, the Cannes Advertising Festival, which we've been to together, and I'm sitting there in the airport lounge at 6 a.m. and there's a guy on the phone, like not only annoying all of us, but he's annoying whoever he's talking to. There's no business being done on the planet at his French Riviera 6 a.m. time. And I say this all the time, and I usually take early flights when I have to fly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm in the Sky Club, and there's people at 5 in the morning, at 5:30,
Yeah.
at 6, like having these animated conversations with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
That's bullshit. I'm just telling you that you're bugging someone, and that's what the boss can do. And I think there's a lot of travel out there and a lot of
Yeah.
busyness and
Yeah.
a lot of after 9 p.m. texts where it's the leader feeling like they need to feel important. It's an ego structure and they're
Sure.
putting it out there and they don't realize. And I got feedback from this at my agency
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that, if I felt like I had to reply to, back when we
The
had
9 p.m. emails.
Blackberries, and like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
because if I send something, then they're all feeling like they have to reply then, and then they're going to not sleep. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, what am I doing here? I just have to stop. And so that's the biggest challenge I have that I don't think is said enough is so much of this busyness and, well, you're a founder is just an excuse to maybe you don't want to be with your significant other, or maybe you
Sure. Yep.
don't want to change the diaper, a selfishness, or at least at minimum a failure to kind of, it's easy to the ego can throw up those tasks
Hmm.
to keep you busy and keep you from facing reality.
You're, oh man, there's so much truth, and I find myself cringing at some of that because we've all been worst offenders. Um, I think, and I will pat myself a little on the back of the lessons learned. I think most people, professionally, we are toddlers with our technology. I used to say a lot, like, the pace of change of technology is kind of this exponential curve, and we're walking up the curve. And with previous technologies like the telephone, pre-internet, like telephone, cars, airplane travel, we had multiple generations for it to kind of seep in and for us to develop norms on how to deal with it. But now the pace of change is, I mean, we joke about BlackBerry like it was an old thing. That was like less than 20 years ago when we were starting our
Yeah.
careers. Like you and I both remember a moment where we had dial-up internet, right? And I mean, I was in the beginning of my career when the first iPhone came out, like the real smartphone revolution, right? And and then everyone Slack and like when I lived in Asia, video conferencing was okay with Skype, but we didn't do it a lot because it wasn't as frictionless as it is right now. Like the walls melt away with the technology now with Slack, text, everything's free, not free, but like the the barriers to entry for all this technology are effectively bottomed out, right? Especially if you've got the company paying for some of it. And AI only makes it even more multiplied. And coming back to my toddler analogy, how we handle it maturely is on all of us.
Hmm.
Yes, you can send an email at 9 o'clock at night, but you know what you can also do? Because to your point, you send that email just because, oh, I don't expect them to reply. And maybe they don't reply, but even if they don't reply, if they read that email, now you're in their head and they're not reading that book or being with their family because they're thinking about what Bob sent them in that email.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you're trying to eject it from your head, guess what? There's literally in Gmail, when you long tap the send button, you can say send later, schedule to send. If there's a late night Slack to be sent, you can do send at 9 a.m. Get it out of
Mm-hmm.
your mind. Now, on the flip side, and this will come back to the toddler thing, we don't treat these tools as asynchronous, these collaborative tools. And they are. You need to
Mm-hmm.
Slack is not a real-time conversation. It's an asynchronous group conversation on a topic. And I know I get really nerdy and my pro tips that you used to get, but like these are real because the transaction costs. Are you putting more time thinking about what you're saying and how it's going to make someone feel? Because it does have a second order effect. Maybe not the next day, but how your people burn out. And man, it's easier for me to talk about this. I need to go follow these rules a little bit better.
Right.
But when you put stuff out there, I think you taught me this. When you never mind what time you send the email, when you send an email, you told me this. This is a Bobism. Pretend the person receiving that email is having the worst day of their life.
Mm-hmm.
How are they going to read your email? So
Mm-hmm.
just take one more pass, write out all your stuff, word vomit it all out. And AI is making it better. Like I've done it now. Like I go back and rewrite myself over and over, but like I had to send our lawyer or company something. I needed to convince them of something. There's a little bit of bad news, a little bit of budget stuff, blah, 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 blah. And I first got it all out because that was the easiest. Just blah, 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 blah. Type it all out really, really fast. Then I was like, normally pre-AI, I would think through it. I would take 5 extra beats to think through it, rewrite it, put the most important thing at the front. Thank you, P&G one-pager training. But now I'll like literally go to Gemini or ChatGPT and be like, okay, I'm trying to deliver bad news, but I need to get to this outcome. Here's a copy paste of my word varmint. Can you tighten it up? Boom, gives me
Mm-hmm.
something. Now I take another pass at it, right? But that's like 3 extra transaction costs on my side to make it easier on the other person. And I think that applies. That's all technology, by the way. I think it, it's everything. And I don't think people think about it. It's so easy to just word vomit out everything at the world. That's what I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
on this podcast
Yeah.
right now. But the people listening to it, you've opted in to be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'll give you one last note. Like a lot of us work late at night. We do. Like my door to door commute. I live outside of Manhattan. I commute to Soho, right? So I gotta ride the commuter rail, and I gotta ride the subway, and then I gotta walk to the office. And the elevators are a real thing, guys. Like elevators add 5 to 10 minutes to your commute. um, but it's a long commute. And when I leave, I don't. I mean, I'm still slacking on my phone on the subway. When I get my seat on the commuter rail, I'm on my hotspot, and it's a worse connection. So I'm not doing video conferences and calls to annoy the guy next to me, but I'm gonna bang out those 4 emails in my draft box. I'm gonna work on that deck. I'm gonna write that job description or work on
Yeah.
that brief. Then I get in the door, and it's dad mode, man. We got to get dinner on the table. We got to help with homework. Got to deal with the drama. There's a little bit of cheating when I'm doing the dishes, checking some Slacks, or when the kids have got their video game. I'm gonna
Sure.
finish that one brief I couldn't do on the train. But then it's back to bedtime mode, and that's a whole thing, you know.
Yeah.
And there's got to be partner time so we can go watch Colbert or The Daily Show. But there's a moment at night, and this is that moment at night, and whatever that time is. It's not that I want to work late, but there's a few things to get the next day started. But okay, my head of sales, who's my counterpart, if I see him on Slack, like his little green bubble on, I know he's working. And
Yeah.
every once in a while, I'll just ping him a dumb meme or something because it's like, aha, you too.
Yeah.
And well, sometimes we do need to, like, it's the one quiet moment that we can actually talk about something, you know? My
Yeah.
CEO sends us emails, but his expectation is you don't have to respond to it. Like, I see him catching up on his emails internally, you know? And
Yep.
usually he's replying to stuff. I'm solving the things you asked me to solve versus I'm putting more garbage out at you. And I've thought a lot about that. Are you finishing problems or are you starting problems
Mm.
late? And are you doing it in a respectful way that if you know people are receptive at that moment? Do you know each other's ground? Like my entire team, the fellow leaders on my team and my direct reports all kind of know that mode that I just explained to you. Okay, Raman's going to be on the train from X time to X time. That's probably the best time to get him. My head of comms, she will write me, be like, hey, I know you're rushing to the train. Can you look at this one brief? Because she knows that's my sit down with documents time.
Mm.
And so I think a little bit of a lot of OCD rambling, but if we're not OCD and intentional and thoughtful about how we do these things with all these
Yeah.
technologies and all these tools, like the flexibility is amazing. My son can be playing Mario and he won't ask me for 15 minutes to help him solve a thing, and I can be banging out a Slack. Like that's
Right.
awesome. But as long as you don't abuse that privilege and let it seep into your life. I sound like a psychopath, but I think you have to be if you're not
No,
maniacal about
I mean
compartmentalizing
you
and
are
solving.
partially maniacal. Type A plus, OCD, all those
But if you don't,
ADD, whatever D's you got.
but you can't go with the flow because if you go with the flow on it, you're going to be an
You'll
asshole
go
to
to
other
the least
people.
thing. Like, I mean, I think that's,
Yeah,
if we
yeah,
could, you know,
yeah,
to tie this whole thing together, I think we started with, you got to think strategically, you know, in your
yeah,
career and family, you know, what it's important to you, what can you live with, what you can't, you know, when is the right timing,
yeah,
knowing the pros and cons, like knowing that there versus letting it just happen. I think that's
yeah,
unhappiness can happen in people's lives, and whether it's relationships, family, or whatever, everything else, but in work too. And you glossed on it, but just to
yeah.
but put a flag around this. Raman is known for giving pro tips. So pro tip, blah 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 blah
I didn't.
blah.
I didn't
Pro
invent
tip,
that term. That term existed
whatever. But
before.
it's branded with you. There's a lot of. I didn't invent Bob questions either, but you know, or lots of other stuff I have, or you know, quotes. But you know, you're the pro tip guy, and I
Yeah,
think that's something that again comes into we have to hack our own minds. And
yeah.
the pro tip of, you know, it can be broad, like anything you say in front of your kids or your employees is going to be read the worst way.
Hmm.
So watch yourself, you know. um Here's a top, you know, for me it was, well, I'm the guy who, you know, I'm a person who has dinner with my kids, so there's not
Hmm.
even a question. Or you're like, I do this on the train, you know,
Hmm.
like making those little rules. It's a discipline, and you know, it's a way of kind of taking control of time and other people wanting things. And it's just like, oh, I don't even have to think about it. It's just, that's what I do.
Hmm.
And I think that's maybe, or again, like you said, what's the pro tip? The pro tip of, my parents did this, I'm not going to do that, you know, or those are all ways to kind of make it work together and blend in this crazy life that we have to live and bring other lives into. But last question: are
Sure.
you glad you had children?
Yeah, man. It's the best slash hardest thing. But again, it's gonna last more. I keep coming back to John Pepper a lot because obviously I didn't know him
Former
at Prop.
CEO and legend, Procter and Gamble guy, who I love as well.
Yeah, I mean he's my friend Drew, who I started the P&G alumni podcast with. We call him like the Mr. Rogers of CEOs in the best way. That is the highest compliment. He is, and again, he was killer business leader and just such a great human. And we've had him on the pod a few times, and I've developed a small friendship with him, like a couple of emails here and there, long conversations that I wish I could tape, like that people could hear. but he talks about his kids. His kids are his best friends now. And again, he's John's got to be he's my dad's age, so mid 70s now. His wife just passed. He has 4 kids, a ton of grandkids, a life well lived, like such. And um, I think about some of the like his kids are his best friends, and that's weird for me to hear. Again, as a kid of immigrants, I always say this to my daughter all the time, like where she'll say something like, "We're friends." I'm like, "No, trick question. We're not friends. I'm your dad." But you want to develop that relationship where it can be that. I remember being in my mid 20s and my dad being in his 50s, and me starting to come into my own and not fully agreeing with him, but respecting his point of view. And it's I remember when you went on your Panama trip with your dad, and I had done a trip to India with my dad
Mm-hmm.
like that. And that's you got to make sure whatever seeds you're planting with them, there's going to be hard lessons, ups and downs, like the startup that you and I were at together. But will they want to be friends and or have the longer like this conversation that you and I are having right now? I One of the best things I can hope for anyone just like you, Bob, is that you get to have these conversations with your daughters and just in just a few more years. And I've got a little bit more runway to go with mine, but like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's I got to be in the right mental state, in the right healthy state, and all those things to have that, because that's the ultimate. I mean, that's the ultimate earnout right there. To like be able to talk about books or movies or
Yeah.
hear about their problems.
Well,
uh,
that's my. I'll wrap us up with this. It's uh, you mentioned my Panama trip with my dad, which is so neat that you remembered that. And I had a picture of that popped up randomly this morning on my iPad on my Apple Photos app. So a little synchronicity. Yes, the universe is talking to us. um, I I got to. I never had like a. It was a moment for us of having like a friendship as parents. I think he
yeah,
something I learned from is he had a hard time moving from the parenthood to the friendship, and
yeah,
he went through some old stuff, his own challenges and things later in his career, and he ended up getting a brain tumor and dying like a year and a half
yeah.
after that trip that I
Wow.
took him on to Panama, which is where he was born.
Mhm.
His dad was in the army there at the time, and so I think about that now, like with my kids who are now one 3 years out of college, one just graduated from college a few uh, months ago, and you have to transfer to being a friend. That is the thing. It's like a whole new day because
Mhm.
they're out living their own life. Um, you
You
can't
have no
tell them
authority
what
over
to
them
do.
anymore.
You take
Yeah.
whatever you can. You know, if you get a text reply, that's great. If you don't, you can't think
Oh,
bad
you
of
said
it.
that, and that broke my heart when I read that one, man. I was like, oh no.
It is, but you can't, advice about jobs and things like you can't push. You got to just be there when they're ready, and just enjoy them. And I think that's now, I wouldn't say the challenge, but that's the interesting thing here because you want to have a great relationship um, that is like a peer and friends that keeps going from there, so that you keep enjoying that over time. So
Can I add to that metaphor just for a second?
finish us
This is for
off.
the
Yes,
listeners. To play the metaphor of family as a startup, that means your parents are your investors, and you should send. I mean, I
it
was
is an investment.
no, I was like in my 20s, the early stages. I think I wasn't as good of a son as I could have been. I wouldn't call every week. I wouldn't write the card for the birthday. And now my wife and we try to keep each other on it. Like, did you send the card? Like, your mom's birthday's coming up. Did we get the card? Did you make the call this week? Like, because if you think about it, like you invest all this time and energy, and this person is blossoming into a thing. And like again, so yes, some of the listeners may or may not have kids, but we've all got parents, and I don't care what the relationship. And maybe it is bad, but like your investors want to hear from you. You owe your investors that quick email update on how the business is doing. And I've been thinking a lot about that because I've had friends who's we're in that phase of life where parents are passing. You were one of those friends who it happened to sooner, and there's only so many moments left. Like it's not that you have infinite moments with your kids, but I've got a lot more coming with them, and I'm laying the groundwork for their future. But these other guys are on the back nine, and how can I? It cost me so little to send that text message. I've been thinking since you wrote that. I was like, I think I sent my parents a text after I read that.
Well, it's got to, but I'm gonna disagree with your analogy.
Okay.
Like, yes, you're an investor until they go out on their own,
Oh yeah.
and then you're just a peer. Because
Yeah.
if it feels guilt, I don't want them to feel the, oh, I owe this. I
Sure.
better be a good daughter. It's like, I just think of the best friendships. Think when you and I think of each other and text each other,
Mm-hmm.
like it's not out of
There's
obligation.
no
For me,
expectation. Absolutely.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I
No,
need to
absolutely.
make sure. And
Yeah.
I've done this, and I've tried to do stuff like this, and thought, well, I need to set my personal CRM to make sure I every quarter touch base with every friend or something. And it's like, no, it's just got to be organic. And so,
Yeah.
and this is something someone told me that I'm a couple weeks ago, that just like when you think of the person, send them a note, send them a
Exactly.
text, send them an
Exactly.
email,
Exactly.
whatever. Like, and then that's, not a guilt thing, because that's not fun.
Mm-hmm.
Friendship is like, we just love each other, and if we don't get to talk for 2 years, we'll pick it
Mm-hmm.
back up and it'll be cool. But all right, well, I'm going to stop us because we can go 3 hours or more. We'll have to have you on again. I'm sure we'll find another topic. Maybe comic books. I don't know. We'll
Lots of
see.
comics to read, man.
There's
Lots of
lots of
comics
things
to
to
read.
talk about.
Lots of
Lots of
podcasts
things
to
we
do.
agree on that we could do in the future. Anything else you want to end us with? I'll put all your podcast links and your LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff. Anything else you want to leave the audience with?
Yeah. No call to actions. Just go send your parents a text. Go do something stupid with your kids. They're not listening to you. It's how you make people feel, man.
And if you're wondering about having children,
Do it.
do it. It's a ride if you can. Not everybody
If you can.
can. Blah blah
Yeah.
blah. Your mileage may vary, but like, ride all the rides in this life that you can, and it is an
Absolutely.
amazing ride, and it just keeps going through all the ups and downs, just like the ups and downs we had together in starting companies. So, all right,
Thanks,
that's
Bob.
it. Thanks again, Raman. Ahoy for now. Bye. Thanks again, Raman. That was incredible. And in honor of Raman, he was the inspiration for today's cool content of the week. A little something I found meaningful. You might agree. And another feature of being friends with Raman is his ecstatic sharing of movies, TV shows, and books that move him. I cannot keep up with them all, and I still don't love Andor. Sorry. But last week he shared something that really blew me away. Revolutions is a podcast that covers great political revolutions that have defined the modern world. Its new 12th season covers the Martian Revolution. Of course, we all learned about the Martian Revolution in school, and our parents still tell stories of the harm it caused. But historian Mike Duncan takes us through a thoroughly complete yet succinct story of the key issues leading up to the events and the players that occupied the stage. A ton has been written and said about the Martian Revolution, but this is my favorite take yet. And if you like anything in the realms of science fiction or business organizational behavior, and especially if you like both, you are in for a real treat. And if you listen and you like it, tell Raman thanks. That's it for this week. Ahoy for now.